So Yannick Sinner finally beat Novak Djokovic in a big Grand Slam match to reach the Australian Open finals, where he will face Daniil Medvedev, who beat Sascha Zverev in a tight 5-set match. Now, first I want to talk about the Sinner-Djokovic match. First of all, Yannick Sinner has improved tremendously and in my opinion is the most improved player among the top players on the tour over the past 12 months. His serve improved dramatically. He changed his stance, which I don't believe made that big of a difference, but he significantly lowered his toss, which I believe made the bigger difference here. And his serve is just so much better. He is much more in control of the points, better first serve, better second serve. And then, of course, he follows that up with his incredibly powerful game from the baseline, which has also improved. I think he's gained confidence there. I don't think there were any big technical changes from the baseline. He moves very well, and he has the confidence to now really play extremely aggressive. And we have seen that over the last couple of months. He absolutely destroys the ball from the baseline, and he did so again against Novak Djokovic. Now, there were a couple of factors in play here. Number one, Sinner improved a lot and is at an incredibly high level right now. The other factor I think that did play a role here is the Davis Cup win that Yannick Sinner had over Novak Djokovic a couple of months ago, where Djokovic actually had match points, ended up losing the match, and Italy won the tie against Serbia. And we all know how important it is for Novak to win for his country. So I think that was a confidence shift in a way. At the same time, Novak even said this in the press conference, really never played his best tennis here at the Australian Open 2024. We never saw peak Novak Djokovic where he just absolutely is on fire and that best, highest level of tennis that we're used to. And in fact, he didn't play that well and reach the semifinals, which again shows you how good he is. Because he can be off and still reach the semifinals. In the first 2 sets against Sinner, I believe he made over 30 unforced errors, which is unbelievable. I don't think I've ever seen that from Djokovic. So then he fought himself back into the match, but Sinner was just better that day, and Novak never had really the level to beat Yannick on this day. So I think it's a combination of factors. Yannick Sinner improved a lot. Kudos to him and his team. Darren Cahill, I think, a great coach, and they really made some changes to the serve. He's incredibly fit. His ground strokes were already very strong. There is a slight weakness always with Sinner when you put pressure on his forehand because he has an inverted racket face. But he manages that fine, and he doesn't get on defense that often right now because the serve is so big, and then he follows it up with huge shots. So most of the time he's on offense, and then this slight weakness on the forehand that really only shows up under a lot of time pressure is not that big of a deal. So kudos to him for improving that much. And at the same time, it'll be interesting to see, are we going to see peak Novak Djokovic again? Is this lower level that he played throughout the entire tournament, does that come simply from age? Is he getting a step slower? Is he not feeling that well? He actually was asked that in the press conference after the loss to Sinner. And he said, we'll see. I don't know, and I think that's really what it is. I have no idea. I hope we get to see peak Novak again, but he is 36, 37. He's getting older, and usually you get a step slower. And once you are just a little bit slower, everything changes on the tennis court. So it'll be very interesting to see if we're going to see peak Novak Djokovic again. I still believe, Novak at his absolute peak still beats Yannick Sinner and still beats Carlos Alcaraz, even if they are at their peak. But, we don't know if Novak is going to be able to show that peak performance level again. It'll be very interesting to see what happens here for the rest of the year. So then let's talk about the second semifinal where Medvedev beat Zverev in a 5-set match that was also very interesting. Now, first of all, kudos to Sascha Zverev. I've been a little bit critical of his game in the past simply because his forehand is often a weakness, a slight weakness, but a slight weakness at this level, when you play against Novak Djokovic or Carlos Alcaraz or Medvedev or Sinner at their best, a slight weakness is enough to really lose these matches. And so he really hit the forehand very well the first 2 sets, And he has been hitting it pretty well in the past couple of months. So it seems like he has put the work into it. I think he's aware of what he needs. He needs a better forehand, a more stable forehand at the highest level to be able to win Grand Slams. The rest of his game is there. His serve is unbelievable. His backhand is unbelievable. He moves extremely well. He gets tight in these matches, but I think that's very much related to the forehand, because if you have a stroke that you're not that confident in, it will show up the most under pressure. And, playing semifinals of the Australian Open or finals of a Grand Slam, that's where you feel the most pressure. And then those slight technical weaknesses will show up, and then he can lose confidence. It can become a mental kind of cycle, and then he can also lose a little bit of confidence in the rest of his game, as we've seen in the past with his second serve troubles, for example. But for the most part, he played extremely well. Medvedev raised his level in the third set and became a lot more aggressive. And what happens then is, Sascha Zverev gets more pressure on his forehand side, especially on his weaker side. He can then lose a little bit of confidence, and especially if somebody like Medvedev with a great two-handed backhand hits powerful down-the-line shots. Zverev struggles with that, and he hits that forehand better from the backhand corner, because there he has a more natural inside-out swing path. And on the forehand side, when he has to move into the forehand corner, he tends to over-rotate a little bit. It's a little bit of an outside-in swing, as we would call that, just a little bit. But that's enough to then, miss the ball wide or in the net, or leave it short when he hits cross-court forehands from the forehand corner. And so if somebody puts a lot of pressure on his forehand with, backhand down the line shots, or even forehand cross-court shots from a right-hander, over time, he can then lose a little bit of that confidence in the forehand. And I think that's a little bit what happened here. Medvedev played more aggressive because he had no other choice. He even said it in the press conference. He was like, I got to change something, and he played more aggressive, and it ended up working. Now, of course, Zverev still, it was 7-6, 7-6 in the third and the fourth. Zverev still played well, absolutely had the chances to win the match, but did not. And then, Medvedev came through in the fifth. Medvedev played his game. It's unbelievable how effective he is returning from so far behind the baseline. I've been critical of that in the past, but if you look at the stats, I saw a stat that he is the second most effective returner on the tour after Novak Djokovic. So he wins percentage-wise, the highest amount of return points. I don't have the source, but I saw that stat a couple of weeks ago, and he is very effective. He gets the ball in play from that position far behind the baseline. Now, the reason he does that is very simple. He has a huge swing on the forehand. He needs time. And he has not mastered to shorten the backswing on the return so that he can stand in closer. Now, I think it is something he should work on, but at the same time, he is incredibly effective from back there, and he has, found a way to put the ball in play, and then he's very, very good at counter-punching and fighting his way back into the rally from way back there. His serve is absolutely off the charts as well. I love Medvedev's serve, and, if his serve is on, it's really incredible. So Medvedev, plays kind of his standard game. He plays his best when he is more aggressive. His natural instinct, though, is to stay a little bit too far back. A little bit like Rafael Nadal. Also, his natural instinct is to stay back and be a little bit more of a counterpuncher. And this comes from being very successful with that in their junior years. It's just very deep in your subconscious mind. I'm sure they both know they need to be more aggressive and standing closer, and that's when they play their best. That's when they win the big matches, in later stages of the Grand Slams. I'm sure he's aware of it, but, it's really hard to fight against that instinct over and over, and that's very deep in your subconscious mind. As a tennis player, you identify so much with winning and losing, and for years and years, these players won a lot of matches counter-punching more and staying further back during their junior years. So very interesting matchups there. I'm very curious to see if Zverev can continue, to improve his forehand. If he gets his forehand under control, makes it a really strong shot, he definitely will win Grand Slams. There's no doubt about it. If he doesn't get it under control, he has to get lucky, in my opinion, to win a Grand Slam. He would have to, do it in a year where the other players are not at their absolute best. And I'm sure there's other young players coming up with great technique. You nowadays, to compete at the top level in the men's game, you must have an incredible serve, forehand, backhand, and you must be incredibly fit. These are absolute musts. And if you have a slight weakness there, it's going to be on any of those three strokes, it's going to be very hard to win a Grand Slam. So very interesting matchup. Congrats to Medvedev, but at the same time, congrats to Zverev for also raising his game and really coming back after that injury, and now he's really back at a very high level. So now let's talk about the upcoming finals. Yannick Sinner against Daniil Medvedev. I'm very curious to see how this match will turn out. Now, Sinner is definitely the favorite in my opinion. He's just playing so incredibly well, and Sinner wins when he controls matches, rallies from the start. And with his improved serve, it's very difficult, to get him on defense. So I see him as the favorite. I think Sinner just needs to play his game, essentially. He needs to make sure that he has a high first serve percentage and controls rallies from the start. He needs to be, in the controlling position, which is usually hitting a little bit more forehands from the backhand corner. That's in men's tennis in general. That is, the most important position to be in. You want to control rallies from the middle of the court with your forehand. The forehand on average has more racket head speed than the backhand, even if you have a world-class backhand. And so he needs to get into that position. I think he will do that definitely when he's on serve, if his serve is performing the way it has been performing in recent months and matches. Now, on the return, I think Medvedev is going to have to serve a high first serve percentage and serve a lot into the Sinner forehand on the first serve. That's what I would recommend for Medvedev. Make sure you have a high first serve percentage, serve into that forehand, because under time pressure, that forehand is a little bit weaker, as I previously mentioned. He has a slightly inverted racket face, and so that's kind of where you can find that slight weakness. So that will be a very important part of the strategy for Medvedev. Medvedev also needs to be very offensive. He needs to be offensive from the start, from the beginning of the rallies. It is against his natural instinct. And so it's going to be interesting to see if he can continue that, which, he made that switch against Zverev after losing the first two sets. And he's always going to be counterpunching a little bit more, but relatively speaking, he needs to up his aggressiveness a little bit, and he needs to attack that Sinner forehand with, flat backhands down the line, really powerful shots, really needs to go for that shot. And also with when he has time to hit his forehand big, hit it more cross-court into the Sinner forehand. And so that really, I think, is the key for Medvedev. For Sinner, it is really he needs to play his game, control the rallies from the start with his serve. And then when returning, it is key for him to also not become too defensive. Obviously, that's very difficult to do when Medvedev is hitting big first serves. But on the second serve, Sinner needs to right away take control of the rally, especially against that second kick serve. Sinner has a little bit more time. That's where he can effectively and consistently hit those powerful forehands. He's not under that much time pressure, and his backhand is absolutely world-class anyways. I mean, there's just nothing there. Of course, then when you play that aggressive, you also need to finish points at the net. So that is something I'll be watching closely. How effective is Yannick Sinner at finishing points at the net? I think that is something that in the next phase of his development, he can get even better at. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting match. I'll definitely be watching it. And please comment below your thoughts. Let me know what you think of the matchup, also of the semifinals, what you saw there. If you agree with what I saw, if you see it differently. So let's get a little discussion going. Please leave your comments below.